Fringe, UFO, UAP if you're fancy. Before I bring our wonderful guests in and let you know what tonight is all about, I'm going to say hello to everybody in the chat that's listening now. Thank you for joining. Please, send it out so people join us. We've got a wonderful night full of experiencers, and we're calling it a very experiencer Christmas. I didn't find a cool Christmas background, but Christmas is around, right? So we don't really need all that. But I'm going to bring in Steph. She's going to be my co-host for the night, and the plan is we're going to bring everybody in, all of our lovely experiencers in for 10 minutes. They can talk about their experience, and then we'll bring everybody together. And if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I will save them to the end. So tonight, I want to introduce Steph from UIP Experiencers. She's my amazing co-host. We've done this before. So Steph, you want to tell everybody who you are, what you do, before we bring in your mom?
Hi, Priscilla. And first and foremost, I would just love to thank you for orchestrating not only this event tonight for not only Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whomever you worship, whomever you may not worship. This is just for experiencers. We come in all walks of life. So I just really want to thank you for orchestrating this and all of the events that you've held throughout the entire year. On top of UAP Book Club, you're just doing incredible work. And I just love watching you grow from the time that I've met you. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We appreciate you. I'm Steph from UAP Experiencers. I pretty much run a platform for people to come forward and share their events. Whatever your testimonial is that you want to share, it can be private or you can come forward public, which I'm going to be working on this coming year. So it will be eventually turning into an on-camera situation. So it's just something that I think has slowly grown into what I'm hoping that people will squash that stigma from. A lot of people want to keep behind the camera. They don't want to talk about it. And I think that now that people are starting to come forward with what's coming forth in the news and it just becoming less of this kind of strange phenomenon, it's becoming a more normalized event in the news. So I think that, we're really truly working on, creating this comfort in the community. So it's just really wonderful to watch everybody come forward and not really care about, what anybody thinks about the situation. So, yes, there are some strange things associated with UAP, but that's where we all come in. This is an entire community. People are getting curious outside of it, which is super promising for the community as well. So just keep coming forward, and you'll eventually dust off those cobwebs and share your story.
Yes, and thank you, Steph, for being so helpful with organizing with me throughout the past year because I wanted to do it more, but I don't like being like here by myself doing stuff. So I like having other people involved. I think I'm getting braver this year. Like I'll do more, solo stuff. But it was so cool to have you be the first person I really talked to you about my experience. And I see that when you did it, I was blown away by the professionalism that you put into it. So I love that, and I can't wait to see when you start doing more this next year. I'm really excited for you and for everybody that's going to be able to work with you, getting their experience out there in a safe and comfortable way. So with that being said, Steph is an experiencer herself. Her family experienced something amazing. So we're going to bring her mother in first to talk about their experience together. And obviously, Steph, you guys can talk together about this. So everybody welcome Steph's mom, Lois. This is her camera debut. So welcome, Lois.
Hello, Priscilla. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. I'm glad you agreed to this. This is awesome. So yeah, Priscilla, I mean, what do you want to do?
I think that I wanted everybody just to kind of say like, what makes you an experiencer? I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes. So, but I'm not going to be, I don't have like a timer. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, enough, in the middle of a sentence or anything weird like that. But I would like you just to kind of explain what brought you into this world as the experiencer world, and what was your experience?
Well, I'm traumatic. Just thinking about what happened to us. It actually did happen. I was about 36 years old. We were out in Hemet, California, visiting my mom and brother on a weekend out in the desert. Actually, it was Val Vista, California at the time. And we always go over there to swim and have a good time. And we lived about 4 or 5 miles to the west of this property. And this particular evening, I was really dark. It was in the summer, it was hot. The property was about 2 acres on a Highway 74. And I knew the area well. It was really dark. I got my 3 kids in the car. I drove up to the front of Highway 74 and I looked. There's like nothing out there, just the mountain is there. It was, and I look and I saw this object as soon as I pulled out onto the road, and I was like, oh, what is this? This doesn't seem right. And I told my son, I said, there's something and it's following us. And I need to instinctively want to get away. I didn't know what it was. And it was a triangle shape.
Mm-hmm.
It had one light up front, 2 in the back, kind of dim white, and with like kind of a hole. It might have been the size of a truck, a large truck. And I was driving a copper colored, I believe it was a 1979 Cadillac that my dad gave me to stay safe on the road. And I was like, okay, I'm like going fast. And I thought, oh shoot, I've got to like get away from this thing. It was so dark and black out. And I knew the side streets. So I took a side street called Grant towards the riverbed. It would be like north. And this object turned. And I was like, oh, gee, I got to lose it. I knew that I didn't think it was from anything here, but I lived my life mostly in the aerospace industry. My family had a manufacturing company, and we dealt with McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, Northrop, Lockheed. It was my life. So I knew that there was something not right. I thought, okay. So I figured I got to lose it. I don't know. I was probably like 36 years old. And my kids were, my one daughter, I remember, was directly seated behind me. I don't know how old she was, like 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6. And another sister was sitting next to her, maybe 7 or 8. And my son was like 10, sitting up front with me. And I figured, okay, I'm going to stop. Mm-hmm. And I stopped, and this object stopped right above. And I told Stephanie, I said, look at it, look at it. Right. I was like kind of yelling at her, look at it, look at it. And then my son wanted to get out of the car, and I said, no, don't. And I yelled at him not to get out of the car.
Right.
And so I turned my headlights off. I'm like, who would ever think that at my age? What to do? I mean, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, this thing wasn't leaving. It was just hovering over me. It made no sound. There was no sound at all. I'm like reliving this. So it's like stressful when I think about it.
Oh, take your time.
Absolutely,
take your time. Yeah. It definitely, we have this memory recall, and it happens, and emotion happens too.
Yeah, it does. I was thinking I needed some high blood pressure medication.
Oh no, as a parent, as a mom, I can't imagine seeing that. And then of course you got the son wanting to hop out. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and well, he didn't, but I believe he opened his window. But I'm like, I can't remember what I said, but the only person that I could get to turn around and look at this was Stephanie. I said, look at it, Stephanie, look at it.
It was
I think I said it like 3 or 4 times because
right.
I couldn't really see that well.
Well, and you couldn't, but you initially saw it when you
Yes.
left the property.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think that that's the main important thing, is that when you did leave, you saw in the rearview mirror on the left side that there was a strange object hovering and following our vehicle that was not a helicopter, because
Oh,
a
no.
helicopter could probably go that slow, but it wouldn't be able to instantaneously stop and mimic our exact motions. So there is definitely something very strange about that. That, coming from an aerospace background, as you said, that this wasn't something that you had recognized.
No.
And as a child, I know you knew that both of us were in the back, Janelle and I, and that we would be able to see from that vantage point from the
Right.
back window. So when we spun around, we must have taken off our seatbelts, looked in the back. I recall my mom saying, Stephanie, look at it, look at it. And I did get a decent glimpse of it. It maybe happened for about 30 seconds from what I recall. But when it did disappear, it was an instant. It disappeared like a blink of an eye, and there was a bright flash, which is another piece of information that I think is quite important. So, as we collect this information from other experiencers, we need to start putting these pieces of this puzzle together. So you coming forward and being as brave as you are today and coming on Priscilla's show, I just think that it's such a brave place for every single experiencer to come forward and just share even one iota of information, so that the people that are collecting this information, there's probably some 3-letter agencies watching this or will watch this that might collect some data that may come, and to bring something to light. So thank you for doing this.
Yes,
Like 2 more
absolutely.
minutes.
Yeah.
I'm
Or
honored. I'm
1
honored.
minute.
So
Please.
you have a few more minutes if you want to, if there's something else you
Okay.
want to mention.
Yes.
So you told them to look out at the window, and at this point, there's no sound or anything, or is there sound happening?
No sound at all. And I thought, oh my goodness, I got to do something. So I turned the headlights on back on the car, and I said, hold on, I got to go fast. And I'm like, I beelined straight on this back road home. And as I was doing that, this object just blinked. It was like gone over the riverbed. It was gone. It wasn't even, I don't know, it couldn't even have been like, I don't know, you can't compare it to a second or anything. You couldn't even
Right.
comprehend how fast it was. It was like poof. And I went home. I'll try to. This is an important part. I went home, got the kids into our little house out in the country. It wasn't anything great, and I immediately opened the phone book, and I knew I had to call somebody, and I called March Air Force Base. And I wondered what's going on. And like, they never called me back. And I just lived my life. And I'm like, when it's only been a year or so when the government's come forward about this. And I'm like, I cannot believe it actually happened. And we need to find out answers. And I would appreciate you doing this.
Yes.
So we have to help our planet.
Well, something you mentioned to me earlier, you text me, we cannot be blind to protect our earthly existence.
Yes.
See something, say something.
Wow.
Right.
And that is a very profound statement,
It really is. You're getting me all. I'm just an emotional. I'm a happy crier. I feel people's emotions. So,
Yes.
that's very powerful. And as a mom, for you to come forward like this, and I'm glad that you reported it and everything. But I'm even happier that you're still talking about it. So, thank you for that. I know it's very scary. I can't, like I said, I can't imagine being in the car with my kids and something like that coming, especially knowing what I know
Yes.
now with like
Yeah.
biological effects
Right.
and all of that. It would be terrifying. So thank you for reliving that with us.
Well, thank you. I look forward to hearing success of your show and finding out and having more experiencers come forward.
What we can do is we could just keep creating a safe space, you know. You never know who might watch us and be like, "Hey, Lois, like I saw you, I heard your story, and it made me want to talk about mine because everybody is this little data point and with their experience. And Steph is so thorough with collecting everything. I send everybody to Steph. I'm like, I like hearing your stories. You can vent to me, but I'm going to send you to Steph because she has all the good questions. So, like, she's collecting the data, you know? So, yes, is there anything else you want to add before I bring you backstage? Or are you going to be able to hang out for a little bit longer? Or are you going to
Oh,
leave
I
out?
could if
Okay,
can I
just
watch? Yeah.
as long as you want, because at the end I'm going to bring everybody in together. So, is
All
there
right.
anything else you need to add to that?
I It's true. It happened.
Mhm.
There it's I'm not making it up.
Mm.
And what would be the reason to do that? You
I
know,
don't make up
that's
stuff.
right. That's the thing is
That's just
why
like
would we do that? Why would anyone do that at this point?
Right.
no, it's like it
Yeah.
really happened.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. And you are with a group of people that are very receiving of this sort of thing. So we
Yep.
know it happened, and we hope that if you're listening and you've never heard stories like this, that you please take it into consideration. Lois had a family, a job, you know, that was respectable, a business. So
Yes.
she has no reason to compromise any of that or her reputation if this isn't true.
No.
So thank you so much, Lois. I'm going to pull you backstage. We're going to bring our next person up. We'll do
Well
female,
said.
male, female, male. We'll alternate. How about that?
Sounds perfect.
Okay,
All
so I'm
right.
going to pull you
Thank
backstage,
you.
and if you can hang out, yes, hang out. If not, we respect that as well. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna go male, female, male. We'll do Shane next because I see some of Shane's fan club is inside the live chat. We're here to see Shane. All right,
Woohoo,
everybody hold up
Shane.
their Shane signs. So here is Shane. And Shane,
Hi.
thank you so much for coming. I wanted to have you on, but our timing was off for like the past 2 months or something, or
Yeah, I
you
think
know.
I actually was headed to Boston for Wounded Warrior whenever we were
Yeah, you were
scheduled.
doing the Wounded Warrior thing, and
Yeah,
I know that's an exercise in itself, mental and
yeah.
physical, and it's a great program. But I'm an Army wife, so I understand that you guys
Mhm.
go through these certain stressors, and then when people get out of the Army and the military, they have to do other things to rehabilitate their minds. So thank you for
Absolutely.
your service, first of all,
Thank
Thank
and
you.
you.
also thank you for coming on here. I'm very excited to talk to you. I actually haven't heard your story. I keep meaning to catch you on these other podcasts, but because you were going to come on mine eventually, anytime I'd see you go on one, I wouldn't listen. So, so I've been ignoring your story until today. Go ahead and tell everybody about yourself, who you are,
Okay.
and then let's get into why are you an experiencer, or what brings you to the experiencer group, and what are you doing here in this crazy UFO land?
Well, I'm a Wounded Warrior alumni, combat veteran. I served 10 years active duty. 2010, I got out after 3 tours. I got pretty sick mentally, PTSD, ended up homeless, addict, all that kind of stuff. I got a lot of help from Wounded Warrior. Got me on the right path. I've been good for a while now, but in 2020, I just left. I think it's Wounded Warrior, some mental stuff. I was just trying to do some, I like to do maintenance, trying to go back and get myself right, community stuff. And I went in, came out, and then pandemic happened, and I spent a lot of time outside. I live in Washington State, not too far from Hanford Nuclear Site. I'd spend a lot of time outside, and I'd start seeing what was pulses of light. And when I say pulses of light, it was the weirdest thing to experience because it was you could see it sweep your eyes, but you couldn't see it any other direction. So, like, it would literally, I could see it hit one eye, then the other. So I could tell it was sweeping across my eyes, and then it'd go away. And so I'd look around the skies almost like a game. And then there it is. It happened again. That graduated into, like, I guess you'd say plasma balls, whatever you want to call it, orbs. Um, those, those orbs were frequent. They still are. I see them, record them all the time, everywhere I go, everywhere, like Vernal. Phoenix, the mountains, stuff like that. I live, like I said, I live near Hanford, and I was constantly seeing this stuff and recording it. Now, I'm not a UFO guy, so I didn't know what it was. I almost got hospitalized because being a paranoid schizophrenic, because I thought people that were following me, right? Because I was assuming I
Wow.
was being harassed by people, because everywhere I went, I was recording these things. And the doctors and stuff, they didn't care what you recorded. This is another one of the reasons I do this whole UAP med thing with Ted Rowe, because doctors and medical professionals and mental health professionals need to know not everybody that says they see something is sick,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because it became one of those things with my mental health past. I had to spend a lot of time, this sucked too, pretending it wasn't there, to walk around and know it's there and just not say anything, not talk about anything,
Mm.
because I had a really good chance of being hospitalized. And it really sucked to try to
Yeah.
be your best self. Oh, I hated my experience, what was going on.
Sure.
To be my best self and for everybody to tell you you're crazy when you're not. You actually cleaned your shit
Right.
up, your life, trying to fix it. And so that was the hardest part. And that's actually the only point. And I survived so much crap. And that's the point I almost took my life, because I
Wow.
didn't know what was going on. And I thought, what's life? What's the point if you do fix things and it's still even worse? So I hated whatever it was. And then I stumbled on, I actually saw Lou Elizondo on TV.
Nice.
So I was trying to figure out what this was, led me to the book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, which led me, just the UFO Twitter type stuff. And then UFO Twitter is where it kind of, oh, UFO Twitter actually saved my life. It can be a crap show, don't get me wrong. But if it wasn't for the support and other experiencers, yourself, people that I've met in the community that have come before, Matthew Roberts, have talked about these things, so that I knew, okay, this is real. I don't know what it is. I know what it's not as a combat vet, USF vet. I just know it's not aircraft. And it starts to the point that even today, like my family sees them now, records them now. Um, I still do places. And the more I learn about this location, this is through a series of synchronicities, and this is wild. I end up in the UAP med because it's important to me. And so another individual's in there, Ron, and he actually investigated this area. The Yakima tribe here speaks about portals with balls of light for hundreds of years. It's like a Skinwalker Ranch type entities, all kinds of stuff here, which I didn't know till after the fact, which explains quite a bit. But for me, and like a lot of you, when I come into places like this, I like to have the conversations, but I do them differently because it's about questions. As an experiencer, you guys get that, the deeper questions like, what's going on? Why me?
Yep.
Doesn't
Yep.
mean I'm special, but why is this? Why you obviously, if something can at will disappear, show itself, why is it showing itself to specific people? That's what blows my mind. And then some people all the time, and I don't know what's going on. And I wonder if my trauma has something to do with it. And I actually think that in my head, my
People have
PTSD,
asked that for other people.
yeah.
They come around during traumatic times.
And I make comments all the time that I see them a lot when I'm emotionally negative or positive. That means either in a super good mood or a really bad place. That's when they're there. So in my head, sometimes I wonder if I'm a pulsing beacon with my trauma, with childhood, war, addiction, all these things I've kicked. And that's why, because it's wild to say, and I say it because it happens. And I want people to know that it's wild to say that I still see them all the time, and they go places where I'm at, and that I don't understand why people aren't interested in the fact that there's something here. Regardless, we can argue about what it is all day long and where it's from. Something we do not understand is here. And what gets me is like the fact that it knows what I know, where I'm going to be. It plays games with me. I know it sounds silly, but I'll be outside to record it, and it won't show until I'm bitching in my mind. Oh, I'm ready to go in, then it shows, or it'll like hide and seek things that,
Yeah.
or a series of lights that keep alternating. One this time going across the sky, 4 this time going across the sky, 2 this time going across, that don't make any sense. My family witnessed that stuff with me. It's like, that's some kind of communication. I don't know who it's for, but I just don't know how people, this is probably in my opinion, this is like finding out God's right there real. This is a world changing thing. So
Big
I don't
deal.
understand why more people don't take notice or don't think about this, because there's so many possibilities. It blows my mind. This is sometimes it's hard for me to not to do and think about only this as an experiencer. I have to take a break.
Yeah, it can
Sure.
take over. It
Yeah,
can
because
definitely take over.
because you want to answer that question for yourself. You don't, you're not caring about proving it to anybody.
No.
You want to know why, what,
Mhm.
and where. So
It definitely
Exactly.
seems like there's a trend in it following empaths,
Yeah.
or maybe that's exacerbating, those feelings of when, you have these noticeable differences in your emotion that it seems to appear. And they've also spoken about it being,
Right.
playful in some way where it is communicating with you in some form or fashion. So, I mean, take note of all of those things, people who think that they may have seen something, but they're
Yes.
questioning themselves.
Everything is
You very
important.
well, yeah, could be witnessing UAP, and it's
Write it
important,
all down,
write
even
it
if
all
it's
down.
small. Like, they're like,
Yep.
sometimes they do this drive-by thing where
Hmm.
I always joke, it's like they're just, like, kinda doing, like, a drive-by. Like, they go by,
Yep.
stop, and then just keep going. There's no lost time, there's nothing else. It's almost like you're waving by somebody and they're like, "What's up?" Like, wave at them, like, because you see somebody is what it feels like. Even that kinda stuff needs to be written down and recorded.
Hmm.
You bring up a great point about the emotional states because that happens, and because of your trauma and all this other stuff, you are now hyper vigilant.
Hmm.
You did post something, and that makes you open to spirits, Yeti, all this stuff, UFO, that just happens to be the one that you see first, maybe. But, I do have a question because you posted that, like, your grandpa saw something, right? A
yeah,
veteran.
my great grand, oh yeah,
Great
no,
grand
my grandfather was actually a pilot in World War II in Korea, bombers and fighters, but he saw two Foo Fighters twice. I used to think he
Wow.
was full of crap too, think he was crazy,
No.
and it's just like, oh, and so for me, like I said earlier, now it was the worst experience I've ever experienced at the time, but the most rewarding, best experience I've ever experienced in my life. I'm healed better because of it. I don't know. I'm not saying they did that. I'm saying the worldview, the change, what me running around like,
Hmm.
what am I supposed to do? I was disconnected from the world as a veteran, like a lot of vets, and I was hurting.
Hmm.
It brought me back in, and I'm here, and I sit, and as I'm going through watching the synchronicities to this point with these people, and I'm like, this is the most ridiculous. I'm doing the things that I thought I've always wanted to do, but I'm doing them because of this, and it's almost like it was kicked into gear because of all of this, and it's hard for me to talk about because I was an atheist who went to being an agnostic because I don't pretend to know, but I also feel like I've been weirdly guided to this place. And it's so weird because it sounds silly to say as a rational individual, but I
Hmm.
can't see any other way I got from here to there besides this experience and stuff. So
Absolutely.
It does play that
It,
role, right?
it
I
sounds like,
mean,
yeah, go
you're
ahead,
not
Priscilla.
don't say
Sorry,
it sounds crazy. Sorry, we're just both talking at once. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is vindication at its best. You have other people who have the same situations that are happening, and it sounds as that you're helping other, military personnel whom have witnessed this. And it sounds like you've got something else in the cards from. I was on a Twitter space earlier, and I heard you speaking about it. If you don't
yeah,
mind.
okay. Actually,
Yeah.
so I'll let everybody know now. So I still got to schedule it, and I still have to talk to him, like to hash out the details. But I'm so grateful too, so excited. I reached out to Lou Elizondo to do a fundraiser
Wow.
space for Wounded Warrior, and he said yes. And I'm so grateful because I know what that'll do for my veterans brothers and sisters. And one of my struggles is knowing I've got a debt to repay that I may not be able to repay.
Mhm.
So this is amazing for me, just amazing.
Absolutely. This is
That's
why you're
great.
here. This is,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll just keep an eye out, and I'll let you guys know
Oh,
once
for sure. Definitely
after the
follow up.
holidays, I'll
Yeah.
reach out to him. So
That's
Wonderful.
great, and he's the perfect person
he's
because
an amazing individual.
I just imagine, like, when I hear him talking, like, you've got this, like, hardened army man, and he's seen all this stuff, he's done all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, this is thrown on the plate too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You obviously know what I mean. It just blows my mind that,
Yeah.
who it happens to. Do you know what so it's
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
it could be something small like the farmer or somebody just like a farmer out in the middle of nowhere or this veteran that's already like, I'm gonna break, I'm broken," and then it comes in breaks you a little more, and then it puts you back together somehow. But that's amazing.
Yeah.
What you're planning to do and what you're doing on Twitter is awesome. I know I don't get on the spaces a lot. It's because my house is always loud because I have little kids. But I'm always, I pop in and out when I can, and listen. And what you've created a community around yourself, and Toop, of course, Tupa, and everybody else in that group. And it's so uplifting to hear you guys talk because you're just so real and you're having fun with it.
Well, I
So thank you
appreciate
for
it
that. Is
because
there
I tell
anything
you,
else you want to add before I bring you out? I
all I
am
wanted
going to
to
bring
add
you
is
back in, but please add anything else that you may not have touched on.
I just wanted to add that my favorite people are UFO people because it's so hard to relate to other people when you've seen the unseeable. How do you explain the unexplainable, but to people who've seen the unexplainable? So you all helped these podcasts, all this. Keep doing it. Keep working hard because that's what I'm trying to do. Regardless of how you put the message out that's here, get it out. It helps people.
Absolutely.
It helped me.
Kudos to you.
And everybody's going to talk to somebody differently. Maybe somebody will look at me and be like, oh, she's just like a housewife, whatever. And then they'll look at you and be like, oh, well, he's been through all this shit. Or they'll look at Steph and be like, oh, well, she does this differently. We all do it differently, but we're all here to give other people space and hold the space for them and give them that safety and open mind that they need to actually get this out of their freaking mind and into the world, even if it's just to us. So thank you so much for sharing all that with us, Shane. It's very emotional.
Thanks for having me.
And in a way, it's saved me too. So
I'm glad I met you, though.
I totally understand that. And other people are going to hear that and resonate. It's going to resonate with them as well. But I'm going to bring you out. I'm going to bring Laura in, and then and then we'll have David after that. But hang out because we're going to do like a big party at the end.
All right.
Okay. All right. Hello, Laura. One of the first people. I have to say that Laura and Steph are two of the first people that I met on before I was on Twitter, on Instagram through Vinny Adams' channel and his lives that he was doing. So that's kind of like how I got like inducted into this whole UFO world and met everybody. But Laura is, I call her my fairy godmother. She's amazing. She's just this beautiful, sweet person. But aside from that, Laura, I'm going to let you tell everybody who you are. And I'm going to let you tell everybody how you're an experiencer. And keep in mind, guys, experiencer is anything anomalous. Lights in the sky, UFO entities, out-of-body experience, astral projections, Sasquatch, ghosts, chupacabra, whatever. You're an experiencer. So please tell us how you are in this world and why you're here.
So, a lot of folks online on YouTube will know me also as Paranormal Pixie Laura, or just Pixie. And I first got into this part of the phenomenon UFO world around the time of the beginning of the pandemic. Like so many of us, instantaneously, you were shut inside and afraid and didn't know, what was going to happen next. So we were turning to social medias to try to connect with somebody, anybody. And for whatever reason, Vinny's disclosure team came up as a suggestion. And I watched one of his podcasts and immediately connected. But what puts me in this community as an experiencer are a couple of things. I grew up in Albuquerque with a mother who had multiple experiences throughout her life. The youngest that I remember her telling me of is when she was 14 years old in Albuquerque and watching a very large round craft hover about 40 feet over the house for several minutes, and then it took off. And a few minutes later, Kirtland Air Force Base was right there, and there were at least 2 jets, she said, that took off after it. Growing up, having a mom who didn't really have many people she could talk about this with. She and I would talk about it a lot. And I could see how confused and hurt she was by the whole situation because she didn't have anyone close that she could talk to. And there were many times publicly that she would tell somebody about her experiences, and she would feel like an idiot or like a crazy person because of how they would treat her. You know, oh, you're just making it up. You're just trying to get attention. Um, the pain in her eyes has always stayed with me, and wanting to find a way to help with that. Now, on the other side of that, myself, since a very young age, I have had various paranormal experiences, everything from premonition dreams to occasional telepathy, um, being able to um, touch something, which is psychometry, and read it and tell you who it's been with or where it's been. Highly empathic. The worst was when I was very young in grade school, and I could be in a room and an argument would break out, and the energy coming off of those people having that argument would literally within the afternoon, I would be physically ill from it because I didn't know what I was doing. Mom didn't know at that time. And I was absorbing like a sponge that energy, those waves that were coming off of these people. My journey through, middle school, high school, and above was trying to understand that, trying to understand, you know, am I crazy? Is this something I do naturally? I've seen more ghosts than I can count. Um, Everything from having a young boy who apparently died of tuberculosis during the late 1800s in Albuquerque, who followed me around to a couple of locations where I lived as I moved, to having shadow figures in my mother's house, um, and having even my grandmother's spirit show herself to me at the same house. Um, Finding this community of people online through YouTube and Instagram and even Facebook, I feel like I've found a home. I found other people that are looking for the same kind of answers, whether it be because they saw a ghost, like you said, or a Bigfoot, or a UFO. There are things unseen or rarely seen that we don't understand yet. And why do we see them? We all want those answers. And I suddenly realized I had a purpose. I was in a right place at a right time. And it was to bring together all of these people that, you know, a lot of folks call it the woo, for the paranormal, the spiritual, all of that. So, okay, maybe I'm a little more on the woo side. Uh, you've got people like Vinnie Adams, who's more on the nuts and bolts side. They think it's, hard physical craft or something of that nature. And being able to, with my experience living in a very scientific town, bring those two together to realize that Maybe what one person is talking about is not so different from what somebody else is talking about. And how do we bridge that gap? Because we have an extremely strong, passionate group of people that are all trying to get those answers and um, trying to find our way. Is it beings from another dimension? Are they UFOs? Are these orbs seen in the sky the same thing as the land lights? Or are they even related to the same orbs that we in the paranormal field see in houses and buildings, just on a different scale? So this past year, I decided to take my spiritual side on a journey of learning in order to try to help these other people that I have met. I have become certified as a crystal healer and as how does she put it? Uh, a soul shift guide. So helping people understand that there are cultures all over the world, religions all over the world that have all experienced these phenomenon and just have different names for them, and try to understand them from both a scientific and a spiritual point of view. And so if I can help people, experiencers like your mom, Steph, she reminds me of my mom so much. She really does. And to be able to help people like that, not to be afraid, not to feel alone, and know that there is support and we are working together to find those answers. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, well said. I'm glad that you found your place, because it can be very lonely if you don't find the place. So
I can't. I've cried so many hours. You have no idea, honey.
sorry.
Feeling alone, feeling like, especially I'm in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and I make no bones about it. That's the home of the Los Alamos National Laboratory, where the atomic bomb was developed, but also so much more amazing science has happened in this town. Everything from the radioisotopes used to treat cancer to using sonic waves to run refrigeration instead of freon, which can be pretty nasty to the environment. And so being a person of my ilk in the spiritual side of things and understanding that side of the world, living in a town where you hear people having conversations of theoretical physics as they're walking down the street to Starbucks. So I've really learned to hide myself because of that, and not having anybody here that I could talk to, that I could open up about. I mean, it wasn't until I talked to all of you that I was able to say to anybody else other than my best friend that my mom saw aircraft of some kind multiple times. She thinks she was abducted multiple times. And whether I can say it's true or not, I could see it in her eyes. It's true for her. And it scares her, and she's lost. So if I can do anything to help this community, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Laura, for sharing all that. It's beautiful.
We appreciate you connecting and bridging that gap also between the paranormal and UAP, because from what it sounds like, there is somewhat of a connection between those worlds. And I'm going to continue to, help you along the way as well, and direct people in your way. And even my mom might come to you eventually, because she is
Absolutely.
traumatized. It is a traumatizing event. Some people have more, lighter experiences, but
Mm.
it goes both ways, and it's something that needs to be discussed. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you so much,
behind
Laura.
the scenes, I'd like to talk to you both about ideas for ways that I can take this to the next step virtually for the community.
Mhm.
And I would
Mhm.
appreciate the help.
Definitely worth a
Absolutely.
brainstorming session with them, with
Yeah.
us too. Yeah. So
Yes.
thank you, Laura. I'm going to bring you out, and then obviously going to bring you back in later. But after David, my gosh, I'm just making up names.
That's okay.
Okay, all right. So thank you for that. We're going to bring in David now. Hey, David, how are you? Thank you so much for coming. And I first met you on the Cabby show, right? We had like an experiencer roundtable, and that was one of the. I think that might have been like the first like roundtable I was part of with experiencers,
Mhm.
because it was like still felt really like new and crazy for me to be talking about it like with just people on a screen.
Yeah.
So, David, who are you? How did you get here? And what did you see? What did you experience?
Um, well, my name's David.
It's like stranger.
I mean, I think I kind of run my mouth a lot on Twitter, and I've done several podcasts already. So, just to try to cut to the meat of what happened and do it like in as abbreviated time as possible. It's interesting to me just listening to these people who have bravely given their stories,
Mhm.
just how out there or how much I went through, and how weird it still sounds to even people who have had experiences. So it's just really difficult. And like just thinking about how I'm going to say it has keyed me up. I think um, when your mother was on here and she said, thinking about it, like her stress levels go back up because you're reliving it and you're like, oh my God. But I guess like the abbreviated version, my mother saw shadow beings when she was a teen. When I was an infant, I had mercury poisoning from a vaccine and I went catatonic. Doctor said I was supposed to die, sent me home with hospice and an incubator. Didn't die overnight, near death experience, some kind of trauma. That ties in later. Then, when my mother was in her 30s, she had two visitations from a tall silhouette of a man. One time alone, and another time accompanied by three small silhouettes at each corner of the bed. Um, Around that time, I was 17. That's when I saw my first UFO. It was like a big blimp. Not sure how far away. A friend was with me, and it was flashing red. It was big, and it did the instantaneous acceleration thing, where it just, like when I heard the Nimitz event, that's one of the things that kind of brought me out. Like I was like, no way, you too. But like I saw it do that, and then 10 years go by, and I hadn't really thought about it. And we live out on, a lot of acreage in North Alabama. So it's a private spot. And I started to see, I'm trying to make this just short as possible. I started to see what I assume were either craft at a distance that were lit up or orbs. I do think I've read that some of the craft from a distance look lit up, but you get close enough and there's no light coming off of them. The Tehran case in '76 talks about that. So I don't know what it was, but I started seeing those a lot. And then I started communicating with them and seeing if they would move and kind of respond, like go up, go down, disappear. And they would. So that kind of started me down the UFO rabbit hole to some degree. And then, gosh, it was several years later, not too long, but I started to see craft in close proximity. I've seen the triangles. Seen two of those. I've seen the last woman spoke of the large round thing. I've seen that, the metallic one. Crescent just looked like a crescent moon. A couple of discs like the safari hat, and most of these are within like, some were as close as like 40 feet, and some were about 80 feet. I do have some of the orbs on video, and then I started having some form of communication, sometimes with just the craft that would flash lights at me at close proximity, and then other forms of communication that I'm not going to get into, but it's the woo stuff. It's the telepathy. It's the dream hacking. It's the downloads, the knowing, all that kind of weird stuff. Then my wife started seeing craft, and then a little bit down the road, my wife saw a tall gray in the bedroom. And she tried to wake me up, and I couldn't wake up. And then a little bit further down the road, we're pretty sure that our 5-year-old daughter saw one, a gray. She woke up like screaming in the middle of the night. And then I saw a gray. Like, I mean, I've replayed that moment in my mind so many times. I don't know what else it could be. And then my wife saw 2 more grays in the bedroom. And then she thinks she saw another one outside in the bushes, but that's kind of up in the air. Even I was just like, are you sure it wasn't like a raccoon on its hind legs? She was like, no. Yeah, right.
I'm only laughing because like we all try to rationalize it to these
Right.
prosaic things. You're like, no, like I've seen a freaking raccoon, you know?
No. Yeah.
We want it to be normal. And that's a thing you have to realize is people don't want this in most cases. They would rather not have to question all this reality and
Yeah,
what is that being.
and too, like, I was not into any of this stuff ever. Like, even today, I'm just kind of like, I don't want to be here. Like, I do. But at the same time, it's like so many people are at so many different levels with this that it's like I can't really come out and have discussions about this yet. But anyway, so then it got so intense and disturbing to normal life that I had to look for ways to make it stop, including asking them to make it stop. And there's a whole lot in between I'm leaving out, but it kind of slowed down. And then ghost stuff started happening. And like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, I saw this like gray, sooty looking ball come through the bedroom one night and go over my head and through the ceiling. And it had little tentacles coming off of it. And you know, these are details you hide because that's weird. Like, it's hard to discuss like seeing an orb, but then you're like, oh, the sooty balls. Yes, we all are aware of those, especially when they go right through the wall. So, you know, it's like you start discussing that. And I did one time, and somebody was like, oh, I've seen that too. 2 people. And I'm just going like,
Just like the green mist. Remember you were talking about the green mist, and I'd never heard anybody talk about that.
you had, John had,
Yeah.
and I've spoken with 2 other people on, you know, one of them is Anjali. I'm sorry, I know that name triggers people. I'm not having that discussion right now. And like 2 other people have seen that same thing. So it's like, you know, opening up about this kind of helps people to go, oh my God, you too.
Sure.
So I mean, even recently, my daughter and my wife were in the kitchen, and this happened in the house next door. It's all on the same property. We've moved into this new house. They were in the kitchen here, and they sent a Snapchat, and they had heard someone say "mom," and they looked at each other and said, "Did you hear that?" And they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that was my 12-year-old and my wife," and that was just like a month ago. So this kind of poltergeist stuff lingers, and you know, in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I saw the headline of the UFOs and the Pentagon kind of confirming these videos, and I was like, "It's my time. Now it's time to tell people." It's like, no, it's not. Sit down. That's not what they were talking about. So it's like, but it's too late now because I've already done it. So
Right.
you
You
know,
are definitely out. and
Yeah,
and it is a strange and abstract club to belong in. So, but there's other people here with you. So
absolutely.
you're not the only one before you came out and spoke on it. So I praise you for that.
Absolutely. And I had to kind of not laugh at you, but I love hearing the way you talk about it because you were not
It's
expecting any of this. Like I grew up with my grandma that was talking about ghosts. We were seeing demons and all sorts of shadow things already. So, I can't imagine just having like this normal world and then out of a sudden
yeah.
these
Oh,
things start happening.
it's upsetting. I mean, it's intent aside, whatever these things are,
Yeah.
whatever they're doing. When I say it was traumatic, people are like, "Oh, so it was negative." I was like,
No.
"Well, I mean, yeah, just in the sense that like I got to go to work, and that happened last night."
Just knowing that there's this weird parallel existence with these beings, whatever they are.
I had like my fingernails fell out. There were physical effects. I'll shut up.
Wow.
But it was the whole 9 yards. So
no, you're very, as a matter of fact, and your head is on straight, as are all of ours. So yeah, and and you don't have to explain that. I know, right? That's relative for all of us.
But I know whenever he says that's the real, this is the crazy, that's crazy, and he's like all that weird stuff. I'm like,
exactly.
Do you know who you're talking to here? Like,
right.
So you're with like-minded people,
yes.
and we've either been through it or we've heard of other people have been through it. So we believe you and we understand what you're going through. And I understand like the whole it's good but it's bad. There's times where you wish you could just come out of the rabbit hole, but we were like shackled in Wonderland now or something because I saw my first craziness like in the sky when I was 5. Ghosts were a thing. That's fine. It's dead people. Demons, sure. We learned about those in Catholic school. Whatever, But this thing in the sky that's only supposed to be like on grandma's Star Trek late at night, it's not supposed to be there. You just automatically become an outsider. And also, though, I mean, the positive side is you become a seeker. And the positive part is it's expanding you into these other realms. But the scary part is that not everybody's seen these other realms or these other beings or has experienced something like that. So it's very isolating until you find a community like this. So thank you so much for sharing that. And if you want to hear, like David has had so many different things happening, you have to go find all of his podcasts. He's went into detail on so many things because everybody here, really, we're just giving you like the quick version of all this. So
could be a movie,
for sharing all that.
Seriously, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you know what? I do have a nuts and bolts question actually for you, David. Something came to mind recently regarding experiencers, and there was something that I took notice of recently at the house that we had always hung out at, where there was a previous visitation also back in the 70s from my other family members. And they had a lot of gadgets. Being in the aerospace business, I mean, we had police scanners. There was always a radio playing. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of an RF signal coming from your home, knowing that there's this great amount of activity happening there all across the board. Do you have anything such as that? I know you're close to a military installation, but is there anything that comes to mind that is near you that could be producing a stronger RF signal?
Me.
I was gonna say,
there you have it.
You.
Maybe that's maybe.
But
I mean,
I've jokingly said, like, I don't know if there's something under the house. There's a lot of land out here. I don't know, but no, there's. I mean, you can tell it's kind of like cabinish.
Yeah.
So our technology is low key. Yeah.
But in the earth, there
investigate
could be like the electromagnetic pulse of that area or the readings in that area. If there's high concentrations of certain minerals that are putting off certain frequency, like a quartz attracts them. That's why I say Sedona is like an insane hotspot because of the quartz. And same thing with the whole cave system in the Midwest has a lot of quartz in it, and a lot of strange things are happening in that area in the Midwest. So actually from the Midwest all the way through Ohio. So that we have to think about geology as part of the science as well.
Yeah. Check the magnetic anomaly maps. I mean, yeah, that's something to investigate. I would definitely look into that.
Yep, an EMF reader. Yeah, EMF reader
Mhm.
is like, so, George mentioned getting an EMF reader. I'm sure he has one, but there's been times where I've been meditating and the thing starts going nuts, and I was messing
Wow.
around with the heist stuff, so and it started going off, and I have videos of it, and I'm like walking around my yard, and people are
Right.
looking at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm trying to find where it's coming from, but
Mind
it's
your
coming
business.
from the left. It's coming from next to me, but
Yeah.
nowhere else. And then the next day, I go to that same area, same time. Doesn't happen. So yeah, there's a bunch of weirdness that could happen. But it looks like Benji showed up. So we're gonna get his story, and then we're gonna have
Thanks,
the big
David.
round table. Thanks for sharing that, David. I'm gonna pop you out, and then I will pop you back in after Benji. I'll pop everybody back in. All right. You made it, Mr. Benji.
What's up,
and
guys?
Mr.
Yes.
NUIP Secrecy.
How does that?
How are you guys? I've been listening
Welcome.
this whole time. I gotta follow up with these
Oh,
incredible
I thought you were supposed to be
experiences so far.
working. Come on.
Rad. So glad you made it.
I
Well,
was
you're on the
working,
West
actually.
Coast. Yeah.
Multitasking.
Yeah, very much so.
Sure.
So
Right.
Benji, you want to tell everybody who you are? Tell everybody, why are you an experiencer? How did you end up here? What are you still doing here? Why haven't you fled?
Yeah, I wonder that myself sometimes, honestly. But no, hi guys, I'm Benji. You guys can find me on Twitter. What is my handle? Benj I might be. And then Instagram is Mercedes_Benj. They're both terrible names. I didn't come up with them. But that's me. I guess I am an experiencer, huh? It's weird. Saw some lights in the sky back in Steph. I don't even remember when that was now. I think it was March 2021. So a little over a year and a half ago.
Fairly recent, though. Fairly recent.
And I was just outside, and there's some precursor to this I can get into, but the main thing that happened was I was outside on a lunch break, and I was just standing there. Thought I saw this flock of birds, talking like maybe 20, 30 of these things. But they didn't move like birds. And I'm pretty savvy with like nature stuff. I don't know. I very much like my nature and animals. So I look at these things frequently, and it didn't look like any type of birds that I had ever seen before. So I was like, oh, that's weird. All right. I saw something similar on Demi Lovato's story like a day prior to that too, which I found kind of weird. But went about my business for a good 10, 20 seconds, looked at my phone, and then I looked back up to look at the birds again, except they weren't there. And if anybody knows anything, birds, like, they don't fly a whole sky width in 10 to 20 seconds. They just don't. Neither do planes. So I was like, where the hell did these birds go? Kept looking around. And then I cocked my head like 90 degrees straight up, and I caught what looked like the 20 to 30 things moving in a circular pattern, but now they were like way higher altitude. But then I don't know how to describe this. They like shifted into two white, like spherical white silverish orbs. And then they started to kind of drop a little bit. And I didn't know what really I was looking at. When they got a little bit closer, and I'm not talking super close, they were probably like 10,000 feet up, something like that. But I tried to take my phone out of my hand to video these things because I had already been looking into UFOs. I'd already been like experimenting with some heist stuff and CE5 prior to this. So I tried to take my phone out of my pocket, couldn't. But it wasn't, maybe somebody will kind of understand this. It wasn't like I couldn't. It was all of a sudden I didn't want to anymore.
Yep.
But I couldn't take my hand out of my pocket either, which was the interesting part. The other thing I noticed, I started getting this like weird ringing sensation in my ears. And around that time is when I started having those thoughts like, yeah, you don't really want to do that, dude. Just enjoy the moment. That was very much the vibe. There was nothing like scary about it. It was just like, just kind of vibe, you know?
Right.
And then I ran back inside after what I thought was maybe 10 minutes of staring at these things. And I went to tell my girl who was working at home at the time as well. She goes, first thing, I didn't even get anything out of my mouth. She goes, "Where have you been? It's been like 40 minutes."
Mm-hmm.
And I just went outside to like have a smoke real quick. That was it. So I shouldn't have been gone that long. And I was like, "What do you mean it's been 40 minutes?" And I looked at the clock, and I had to clock back in from lunch like right then.
Right.
So I don't really know. But
Yeah.
the other part to your question, I hope that answered the first part of it. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
Um,
it definitely sounded like that buzzing was this auditory illusion that is very similar to other experiencers, which is incredibly fascinating. We need to figure this ish out, you guys. This
Yeah.
is wild. This is wild because, I know that you're in music also, and so you do hear a lot of different tones throughout the day and all. Yep. I know Tom DeLonge got you into this too
Oh
in
yeah,
some regards.
definitely.
But total side note. But yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about that pause that you had. It was almost like this like thought paralysis that you had where you're like, okay, I'm not going to move my body. I'm going to take in this situation that's happening that, you had zero control over from what it sounds like. It's just unbelievable.
And like I wanted to. Like
Yeah.
towards the end of it, I started to kind of like, especially when I went back downstairs at that point, they had kind of shifted away from me and just like flipped out of sight. Like they didn't zip off or anything
Yeah.
or accelerate up. They just gone.
They do. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then kind of like I guess my wits or whatever you want to call it, like came back. And I was like, oh, I gotta go tell somebody. I just saw this.
Right.
Like, am I going crazy? That whole thing. But that was the main part of it. The part I find interesting about it, though, is for a while I thought I didn't ask for this, right? It wasn't something that I like wanted to have happen. But what I have found just by experimenting with it more and also like reading about it and hearing from other people who've gone through similar things, the heists and CE5 stuff doesn't always happen while you're doing it. So I think it could have been something that I asked for, just not in that particular moment. If that
I've
makes
heard
any
that.
kind of sense at all.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that. And people that lead those sorts of meditations even will say, like, you might see something tonight, it might be like in 3 days. Like it doesn't, it's not consistent. So that's another
Yep.
interesting thing. Like, why isn't it? Why does it work for some,
Yeah.
like
I don't know.
It's
right
that
after,
fixed-
and why
And
is
I've
it
done
like
it a few
delayed
other times
response for other
since.
people?
Yeah, and I've done it a few other times since, and it never and I never see anything like in the moment of actually doing like the work. Meditation experiences are different in my opinion, and I'm still at a point where I don't know if it's happening or if it's part happening and part your brain filling in
Mm-hmm.
gaps of like what you want to see in meditations. But the weird part is, at the same time, for me at least, none of the stuff that I've seen in meditations or things I've necessarily been like communicated to, those I did not ask for at all. I wasn't expecting any of the stuff. Just like you asked about what keeps me here. That's a big part of it. It's because of things that were like, for lack of a better term, it communicated during some of those experiences during meditations. It's like big thing was don't seek this stuff if you're not going to share it with people. It was very much don't keep this stuff to yourself if you're going to look into it at all. And it's not an I told you so type of thing. That's why you'll never hear me say that to anybody.
Right.
Totally.
You know, I don't know. I got this like really strong like notion to like UFO Paul Revere, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it keeps me here. I'm still here. Simultaneously, I come to find out that all the stuff that I used to believe about Tom DeLonge, or it's right there, I guess. Maybe he's not full of shit after all.
Yep.
And it's all coming out while I'm having all this weird stuff happen. So it's like this thing. And I know I'm not the only one that knows what I'm trying to get at. It's like, it's all happening at a very interesting time frame. People always talk about agendas and things when they're talking about government and conspiracies and cover-ups and whatnot. But I think people should ask whose agenda are we actually following in some aspects of this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be the others,
Yeah. Is it
especially
man-made?
Mhm.
Is it something a little bit more complex? We don't know.
Or a
Time will tell,
combination
I
of it all,
think.
right? Because people
It's
experience so many different things.
I think it's that. Yeah, there's too
Mhm.
many types of encounters that people have. Like I myself have had encounters with what people would refer to as like biblical figures that
Mhm.
they just happened to be there. I didn't ask for that to happen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had other times where it was like what you would refer to as like Arcturian beings and things like that.
Mhm.
So, but then again, are those things that whatever this entity is or are they calling themselves that, or is that something that we call them to make sense of it?
Mhm.
You know,
I've
I
wondered
don't want to
that
give
too, yeah.
labels. I don't like giving labels to different types of beings because
Well,
truth
yeah.
is, in my opinion, nobody knows yet, at
No.
least.
You gotta be
No.
careful if you think you know, because they could
Mhm.
just that's when you start questioning, what does it want? What do they want?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing all that.
yeah.
You're definitely like a big part of the community, and you always spread like all the positive vibes. You never judge anybody.
I
If
try to,
somebody's
man. Some people
fighting,
get on
you're
my
like the
nerves
first to pop
sometimes.
in and be like, "Hey guys, like, aren't you guys friends? Let's not do this," So
Yeah, I mean,
you're like the voice of reason.
like I just have time for it. Like we argue about everything else, and I've said this on other shows before, but there's so much like dysfunctionality in our society these days. Like, why bring it into something that's way bigger
Right.
than an
Right.
individual? You know, like
Hmm.
there's way too much at stake with this, and people think like I've heard people claim it. Oh, this is like a government game and it's a psyop and stuff. It's a pretty freaking dangerous game to be playing with people
Yeah.
if it is that. So
And maybe part of it is, part of it isn't. We don't know. So
right,
it's still all a possibility.
Yeah. The
definitely.
synchronicities are undeniable for sure.
I need a whole other hour
Yep.
to go
Oh,
into
I know,
that.
right? We need a synchronicity
All
show because then we
24
gotta talk about
hours
yep.
Right.
show.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna keep you in because I'm gonna bring everybody else in, and for the next like 20 minutes or so, I kind of want to get everybody together. So if you haven't met each other yet, you can meet. If there's anything that you didn't get to say, I know Steph has some questions ready. So,
Sure.
or you guys might have questions for each other. So I'm gonna start adding everybody in, starting with Miss Lois, and then David, Shane, and Laura. Welcome back, everybody.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess my blanket question for everybody is what impact would you like to create for the community, and what I know what brought you forward. Now you've all pretty much explained that. So what impact would you like for people who haven't come forward and they're on the cusp of?
Do you guys want to go in
Benji, just
wanna-
go.
order?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
I'll
start
start,
with
I guess.
Benji. We'll work our way back around because we'll just go like in the row, I guess, where
Um,
everybody is.
that's a great question. I think just letting people know that this is not an actual weird conversation to have, because I feel like more people than you would think actually have had exposure to this stuff, whether they recognize it right away or not. I think that as an individual, I want to leave an impact. Just the simple fact that I truly believe this might be one of the next steps in our evolution as a species. So I hope that if anybody looks into the stuff that I repost online, it kind of paints a picture of like, hey, this is a lot bigger than just government documents. That's it.
Absolutely. Love it. Mom, Lois.
Hi, I'm like really blown away by Laura and David. David seeing things. I've had other instances where I've seen things. Not every day. But back in 1973, I saw a figure in an apartment. I couldn't quite figure it out. It was it was just a flash with like it was. I've told Stephanie this before. It looked like it was a man, maybe 5'7", light blue shirt. You could see through. But the reason why I saw that was my son was about 3 months old, and he was screaming his head off.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, to make a long story short, my mother-in-law said that it looked like that was her father, and we were having my son baptized. And that was in 1973. And then I'm pretty sure, to step back to a different situation, 19 maybe 55 or so,
Mm.
I was living in Los Angeles, and I was just, I don't know how old I was, like 4 or 5 years old. Our dog was screaming, I mean, barking. I just wouldn't stop. And then we had a phone call from the Midwest that my dad's mother passed away.
Mm-hmm. A lot of connections with people passing. And one thing that I can tell the community is, if you've had family members that have claimed, we've seen something before and maybe they're not here any longer, and there are photos, is to actually look at the back of these photos. And this was information given to me from the alien hunter Daryl Sims, where you can actually look back in old family photos and see if there's something strange in the background. There could be some sort of an object that you never noticed before. So this is something serious, really interesting for people to take note of. And I think that that's something that people can follow on along the way, Mom. So thank you again for coming. And we're going to pass the mic to David.
I appreciate you sharing that. I feel like a lot of people have stories like that they do not communicate openly. I feel like even in the, a team is only as strong as its lowest common denominator. So in the general discussion, when you start talking about shadow beings entering into your home and things of that nature, that's way over here. And you got to still meet people over here debating whether or not this is China or black tech, and so it's like there's this whole spectrum. And I guess like the impact I'm trying to make, I don't know, I'm in 10 different directions all at one time, but like just to convey the gravity of this, because it is like Benji was making the point, like listening to Tom DeLonge and then coming back and going like, maybe that wasn't all nonsense. And I'm just here to say it isn't all nonsense, that these craft have something in it and they're interacting with people. Like, you don't have to believe me, and you can come to find that out on your own. But that's my truth, and that's what I'm going to keep hammering home on. And then just people need to be able to talk about this without it having it ruin their lives. So the stigma breaking down also. Bob McGuire mentioned that today in a comment thread I was in, that he had a lot of negative impacts only because he just shared what happened to him.
Yes, sir.
And that's got to stop. And to Shane's point with UAP Med, like, it's just not. Sorry.
Wonderfully said. Agreed. And Shane, what are your beliefs on, why you came forward, and also, what you hope for people in the future to come out of this?
I have to say that I came forward just to be a face, a voice to the experience, like so many before us. The ones that took the laughs, the mocks, right? The ones who are going to say their story regardless. People helped me. And on top of that, I have a hard time I have a hard time denying the fact that I'm here. And now I have the Roswell UFO Symposium podcast and friends and other things I do to speak to these different things, veterans, experiencers, mental health, and only because of my experience. If I could do one thing, it's every day make one more person aware that something is interacting with us that we don't understand. That's it. That's simple. And that's an easy thing I can do.
Amen to that,
Amen.
man.
That's right. Thanks, Shane. Laura, Beauty, tell us more.
Yeah, so, as I said before, being able to be a part of a community that's divided into subgroups in the community, UFO, UAP, shadow beings, paranormal of all kinds, and bring us together to realize that there is a really good chance this is all connected, whether that connection is all through consciousness, and understanding that consciousness doesn't necessarily have to be a woo word. The way the human brain works is through waves. You can actually measure those waves with scientific equipment.
Mhm.
And I think that there's something specific about experiencers of all ilk that has to do with how we not only send those waves of thought, but how we receive them. Thinking of the human brain as like a radio, where it can send and receive signal, and trying to find that answer of why. Why us? Why are we the way we are? It's obvious just from talking to all of you that it has changed your way of thinking.
Mhm.
And when you change your way of thinking, you're literally rewiring the way your brain perceives reality. And when you do that, you do tend to see more of the phenomenon in all its aspects. And if I can help people to understand that from both the woo and the scientific, then we can progress towards that answer.
It does seem as though we are marrying the subjects together, and you're doing a fine job of doing so. So thank you for doing that.
Yep,
Namaste to
absolutely.
you.
And I'm there with you because I don't know. I see all these people like doing their one thing, like I do nuts and bolts, or I communicate with aliens and give messages from them, or whatever, and I'm just kind of like a mix of the two. And I've become more skeptical this past year, learning more from other people, reading more, even with like the so-called woo aspect. I'm just like, this is physics somehow, but we haven't figured it out. And
Exactly.
then there's part of me that's like, oh, I just want to be a witch. Leave me alone. I don't want to hear any of this. But then there's part of me that's like, no, because it happened. And,
Love
it's just
you.
the being at odds with yourself. But there is going to be like that middle ground because we're even seeing people that are very like scientific and nuts and bolts and sort of now just saying like, we're beginning to think that consciousness is part of this and it's all connected. And everybody over here is just like, that's experienced simultaneous things or a multitude of things. It was like, well, yeah, like where have you been? Yeah, and our ancestors saw this in cave paintings and talked about it. So it's
Mhm.
just good to see everybody catching up. But there are going to be people that need that explanation for them to move forward.
Exactly.
So I have a
Agreed.
question for everybody, including Steph. What would you say to somebody that is new to the community or somebody that has just had an experience that wants to talk about it? What is your advice to a new person, either just coming to the community out of curiosity or a new experiencer?
To a new experiencer, my questions would be, well, first and foremost, it's wonderful that you're seeking out information and you're seeking out people in this community because it tends to be growing. I think that that's the first important thing is realization. And then also what we've all collectively said is, okay, I'm not a kook. I'm a totally straight person. I'm okay. I'm pretty sure that, I have actually seen something physically, whether it be an apparition or what have you. So if you first come to that conclusion, then, things are good. We're good. We're in the right place. And, hopefully there's people in the chat that are, on that cusp of coming forward and seeking out somebody further. There's plenty of groups out here, besides all of us. There's other people that you can seek out. Of course, there's MUFON that we all are aware of. And there's the experiencer group, and then there's us. And then, you know, there's Priscilla, who has her book club that goes down the line of all different sorts of, you know, the UFO rabbit hole, we'll call it. So there's definitely the resources. And I think that that's your other safe place, is that, you know, there's people that share this with you. You're not alone. And then also, I think that there is a very serious side to the mental health aspect also, is if you do need to seek some sort of therapy, that there are definitely avenues to go in that route. Also, the UAP Medical Coalition is another place to go to. And this is a place for experiencers and non. So there's licensed therapists that are here to help you also. And, you know, while we don't direct you to those places, we, you know, of course, have drop downs in our, you know, our areas that you can find them from. So, you know, there's definitely resources. And I think, you know, I applaud you for coming forward. It's such a strange club to be in, and but it's also a beautiful place to be at the same rate. So I think that, you know, let's keep moving forward. We're pushing it forward, and yeah, don't be afraid to come forward. That's it.
All right, Ben, what is your advice? No, that's perfect.
Short and sweet, really. Get off your phones, for one. Look up. Bet your ass, if you look up long enough, you will see something. If you are going to look at your phone, though, definitely would recommend following a few people. James Iandoli for one, Vinny Adams for two, Sean over at Witness Citizen. These lovely people in this chat, especially Steph and Priscilla, you guys have awesome work. Same with you, Shane. And if I could recommend one piece of material to look at, I would have to say, for somebody who's never seen any type of documentaries or anything involved with UFOs before, go watch Randy Nickerson's Aerial Phenomena. Came out this past year. It's a very, I would say, unbiased look at something that happened, for lack of a long explanation. So go check out Aerial Phenomena. That's my other thing. And keep looking up.
All right, and we'll go to Lois. Thank you for hanging out. I know you were gonna like do your thing and leave, so I'm glad you decided to stick around. What is your advice? I mean, you are somewhat like, so you've been like, what I used to tell people when I first kind of came into the community is that I'm new to the scene, but I'm not new to the subject. And that's kind of your situation. Like, you're starting to talk about this more and more openly. So you're new to meeting all these people, but you're not new to the subject because this has happened, you know? So what would you give somebody that's like in your position? Like, what would you tell them to do?
Look up, like Benji says. And then also, I have more to talk about, but maybe tonight's not the time, but seeing things in my dreams that are real. It's kind of scary. I don't really want to talk about it right now, but
yeah,
I
would love to talk to you about that anytime, by the way. That's kind of like my area of interest on the side. And I don't even know how to start approaching it. I don't even know how to start studying it, because people tend to dismiss these different altered states. And I believe that the dream world is a different altered state where we're able to access either memories or have an experience that is very real. So whenever you're ready to talk about that,
I would like to talk about it. It might take another 10 minutes to talk about, but the biblical world.
Yes, exactly. I will just chime in really quick and let you know, Priscilla, it does involve angels and demons, and the extent of her dream, which we will talk about on your special episode for dreams, because Mom, I do think that it is that there is something about it that is that it happened after the sighting. So there could be some sort of a connection, which is fascinating. So
yeah, let's
take note of that as well.
Yes, please. Let's talk on the side when we do that, because interestingly enough, a lot of
Oh yeah.
what I experienced was like angel and demon stuff initially. So
Yeah,
I kind of
exactly.
went in reverse. So you're not alone in that.
Oh, thank you. And I'm not afraid. I'm like,
Hell yeah.
I'm not. I just want to know. I'm like, let's
Right.
get together and it's life goes on. I'm living my life, and but there is something there. But yeah,
There is. That is
thank
true.
you,
Absolutely.
thank
And
you
I know
for
you've been up
inviting
since 5 a.m. So
me.
if you
Oh
want
my
to check
goodness.
out, it's totally okay, Mom.
Yes, please.
We love you.
You've been here. You've been
Appreciate
great.
it.
I would love to talk to you in the future. And Steph can give you
Exactly.
my contact information. You can give her my number, email, or we can have like a private conversation before she decides to talk about it more. Because the dream thing is just, oh my goodness, it's a whole another. That's a whole another 2 hours, guys. Like at
Oh,
least.
yeah.
And
And
it's
mine
also
as well.
very
Give her my
scary.
contact.
Dream contact. Okay. See, so
Yep.
we'll have to have like a dream contact situation in the future.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Well, thank you so
Well,
much.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy
You too.
You
holidays.
too.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
I'm sure we've all been up early for one reason or another.
Yes, we have. You guys are rock stars. Seriously. Thank you.
So now I'm all mixed up. David, what is your advice to people coming into the community or thinking about coming forward with their experience? Is there anything you can say to them, that might encourage them or
I think that if they're new to the community, they really need to get on board with activism. It seems like such a long shot, but they have got to release this video, this data on some kind of official scale, because that's going to be the tipping point. Then that way your drunk uncle at Thanksgiving that wants to laugh at you is going to not do that. And to Shane's point again with UAP Med, if you go to a psychiatrist, if you go to a doctor and you say, this happened to me, this was in my room, I saw this, guess what? Unless that guy already knows or has been read in or saw that video or whatever, you are either going to the hospital into a padded room or you're getting put on medicine. 100%. So you got to get on board with the activism to try to bust this thing open and break down the stigma. And then outside of that, I don't know. You do need to be brave enough to tell your story, but you need a safe place to do it. And I would direct them to, I'm not a good person to direct them where to go on that, but you need a safe space until that stigma is gone. Because if you go to a doctor, it's not going to end well. And that's all I'll say.
that's very real and very scary. I met with a woman who was a psychotherapist that had like an experience, and she said if any of my patients would have come to me with this, like I would have had them committed. And that, like when she said that, I just started like bawling my eyes out because that's one of your greatest fears. Even Whitley Strieber talked about it. He was trying to beg his wife to divorce him because he's like, I'm crazy, I guess. So you just might want to, divorce me already because something's wrong with my head, or you're not going to believe me, or you're going to think I'm crazy even if I know it's real. So the mental health aspect is very big, especially if you're an atheist and you experience this and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, like it was only supposed to be science, or vice versa. It's only supposed to be one God. It's simple. You go to church, you go to heaven, you go to hell, whatever, and then all of a sudden this being's there, or you have this anomalous experience that you can't relate to your religion that you've grown up with or that you believe in, or maybe it opens your mind to being like, maybe there's more than just the God that I learned about, whoever that may be. So that also can lead to the ontological shock and crisis, like mentally for people. So thank you for talking about that.
If I can add one thing really quick, guys, this is going into like if anybody's new to the community and doesn't know necessarily like the larger concepts that we're kind of talking about, we're hinting on some specific things without giving much detail on like individual cases. I think for people who are new, go back and watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
Because the way that Spielberg portrays, I think it was Dreyfuss's character, is the main guy in the movie. He portrays that very thing as like the feeling of going crazy because nobody believes what you saw, even though you know for a fact what you saw was not, like, you're not making it up, and how that can lead and kind of derail from there, as we see in the movie. So just go check that out.
As a child, you just triggered a memory, actually. My mother, my uncle, and myself went to see Close Encounters in the theater, and there were specific scenes throughout that movie that I literally watched my mother burst into tears over, and her hands were shaking.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's
That-
common too. A picture of an ET, like
As a
Whitley Strieber's
child,
book.
that told me everything she was telling me was real.
Yeah,
It'll
people
evoke
don't
that
react like
anxiety. Yeah. Sorry,
Mhm.
Priscilla.
Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, well, it will, create these feelings of anxiety and, terror. Unfortunately, and there is, it's not
Classic
all rainbows and
PTSD.
butterflies, as we all know.
And even
So,
if it
yeah,
is, like, it makes
perfect
you
example.
wonder, like, are these rainbows and butterflies real? Or why are they rainbows and butterflies to me, but then to somebody else, it's the most terrifying moment of their life. So it's
Yeah.
the whole, like, trickster element too
Mhm,
that comes into play.
for sure. Yeah. Agreed.
Well, Laura, we skipped Shane, but I'm going to have Laura continue. Laura, so what is your advice then for somebody? We'll come back to you, Shane. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you out.
So the first thing I would do, if somebody came to me with an experience, it's 4 words. You are not alone.
100%.
And then 3 more. I believe you. When someone has gone through something like what all of us have been through in its various forms, you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their mannerisms, just like what I said about my mother and her reaction to those scenes in Close Encounters. It's PTSD. Whatever happened to them has affected them so severely. Just saying you are not alone and mean it. That you're there to help them figure this out and not to be afraid.
Mhm. Can I just say for all of us also is how selfless of all of us to come forward and put ourselves out there to provide this kind of comfort to people also. So it's just a very selfless act, and you guys are all amazing. This is wonderful. We got this together. So
Yes, same goes back to you.
it makes me
You're
emotional.
amazing,
Yeah.
all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Laura. That's very sweet. I'm still kind of taking it in because when you talk, it's just you really have like that. You have just like this whole like priestess energy where you're just holding this safe container for people. So whenever you talk, I'm just mesmerized, and it takes me a minute to just come back. So you need to write meditations because I would definitely listen to that. So Shane, what about you? What is your advice? You mentioned the challenges with mental health, and I talked to Tom Matt, I think like actually this week. Was it this week or last week? All my days are blurring together. I think it was like late anyways, I talked to him recently, and David, you know him too. And he was talking about the whole, the wild ride he went on with his mental health and addiction and everything. So, and that's a very scary thing. Like David said, like people are afraid of being committed when they talk about this, or if you have a history of mental health, they'll be like, oh, well, now you're on all these meds. Of course you're seeing things. Or, like for me, I'm afraid people are gonna be like that Jeffrey Dahmer show. The first thing they said to make his mom sound crazy was like, oh, she believes in UFOs. I'm like,
right. Well, gaslighting, right?
Yep. Can't even watch a serial killer thing without UFOs getting made fun
It's
of.
everywhere, dude. They follow us everywhere.
Right.
Gotta be stronger than that, guys.
So what is your advice, Shane, to somebody thinking about coming forward, or to somebody new to the community? Where would you direct them if they're like, Shane, I had this experience, or I'm new to this community, and they come to you?
That's one of the reasons I hold spaces. And I make it a point to, in my spaces, they have threads, and I say in the threads, put a resource. Just everybody that's in this room. I don't ask for anything, but put something that brought you into this subject. For the selfish reason, someone may click on that link, end up in a space, and realize this subject is real, experiences are real, or maybe they had an experience and like, oh my goodness, this was real. My one, I guess, the role I play is to foster conversations, but they're with a point to these conversations, to explain to people in a way that they will understand, and also to read rooms and understand what they can and can't hear. And then they don't have to take my word for it. I almost have a script when I talk to my doctors, because I shouldn't have to compartmentalize my mental health. No one should ever. So I have a script I go by. You don't have to take my word for it. You know, you're a scientist, technically, a doctor. Dr. Gary Nolan over here, Avi Loeb. So I give them people. They're going to have a lot harder time thinking, maybe they're wrong. And it sounds cheesy, but I always have that ready. So if I want to convince somebody, I have a conversation instead of just telling them. And then I kind of let them know, look, you don't believe me? Check these people out. Like I said, it's all about convincing one more person every day, because sometimes these people themselves are experiencers and they're so scared and it's so life shaking and rattling. They won't even talk about it until they realize that other people have experienced it, just like any kind of a trauma.
And that's some great advice. Sometimes all people need is just somebody to listen that one time. So, yeah, that's perfect. Does anybody, I think like my final question, Steph, if you have another question, that's fine too. Do you have anything else you want to ask?
Something that's been on my mind is I think that it would be an interesting sort of scientific study to conduct some research on experiencers. So you don't have to say yes or no, but I think this is something that I'm going to try and orchestrate to put together in the next year or two. Might take some time as far as logistics go, but I would like to do some data-driven analysis regarding experiencers. Yeah, and ideas are welcome.
That's great, because that was going to be my next question, is what is your plan? What's everybody's plans, or closing up here, what is everybody's plan for this next year? Or is there anything that you wanted to talk about tonight that you didn't get to talk about? So Steph just said she's going to do some really cool stuff this next year.
Yeah, I would like to go on the data-driven analysis on experiencers. So of course, we have the events that have happened. Now, are there RF signals? Is there an electromagnetic frequency when you meditate? I'd like to see, is there some sort of physical trace among experiencers? And I know that there have been other maybe different studies done, but I'd like to kind of crack open it a little bit further and do something that's of course safe and that everybody agrees to, and can be recorded, can be private, whatever, but let's collect some information on experiencers. That's my goal.
Quick shout out to George. First of all, hello to anybody that joined us since I've addressed the live chat. Thanks for intercepting the troll, George. You're the best. He's
good job.
I was like, oh
back
God,
under your bridge,
I went to go block it and delete this horrible comment, and he already had handled it. So thank you, sir.
If I had read that, I would have gone through the roof.
Oh my gosh, it was just some like sexy find info type things.
Oh, we got bots. Love it.
Spam, but I've had worse. Like, there's
David is like the big brother in the Twitter chats, FYI. So if you ever need backup, he'll back you up.
Yep, he will defend. I've seen him do it, and I'll just on the threads too. So
verbal kung fu.
Yep.
Thanks.
That's one way to say it.
Right on.
So Benji, did you is there anything else you wanted to address? Do you have any big UFO plans for 2023?
Not like official UFO plans, but I am going on a cruise, and it like the whole path is the one whole corner of the Bermuda Triangle in November.
What?
So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm not going to have any cell service for a whole week, so I'm just
nice. So if you like go into another dimension, we're not going to know.
Yeah, you'll never know. Sorry. But I'm gonna like literally I'm gonna have nothing else to do but like drink on a boat and watch the ocean and the sky. So I will let you know if I see anything.
Nice. Get us some USO info.
Yeah. We will telepathically, vicariously live through you also, by the way, since you won't have cell.
But in regards to info though, I am currently, and I don't have any type of time frame. I brought this up on a show I was on with the cabbies the other day, but I am trying my damnedest to get flight logs from the Virginia plane, the Air Force plane that supposedly landed at Campinas military base in, I think it was Espasix, Brazil. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I've been through 4, maybe 5 offices now, including NARA and a few other, like the Air Force Library. I've been to them too. And I'm hitting roadblocks because apparently flight logs are destroyed after it's either 3 years or 3 months. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm going to appeal a few other things because they haven't closed my FOIA request yet. They basically said, we can't give you anything, but we're not denying you your request either, so you can appeal. So currently dealing with that and looking into a few other things, but my attention is very much on the Air Force right now. I want to know why they seem to be the biggest point runner of still trying to keep the lid on this. And I know Chris Mellon said this recently, and I know this to be true because I have family in the Air Force and I have these conversations with them. And for whatever reason, the Air Force they take this subject very, very close to the chest, more so than other military branches do. Now, why that is, that's what I want to find out. So,
I mean, you can speculate. I mean, they're up in the air, so if something's happening up there a lot, then holy crap, it's scary.
You're collecting data. Data is facts. That is
like Benji's like that.
This is hard information.
He's working on cool things, and
you would never guess too. You're just like, hey man, like let's play some music. You're just a LA dude, you know,
like
you're
the
doing your
command
thing, and
center
then
guy.
people
You're like Benji, I need you to look this up. And he's like, all right, I got you.
Yeah,
do it.
Behind the scenes.
Keep
actually,
pushing forward.
Speaking of that, if I can steal the mic for 1 second, I do have a question I wanted to ask you guys. I have been here interacting pretty much 24/7 with the community for going on 2 years now. And the one thing that I have noticed that's very apparent is that this is a community full of creative individuals. I look around and I see people in the chat too. But even on this panel right now, we have artists. You know, we have people that play music. We have people that run podcasts and do videography. We have people who are writers. You know, these are all creative outlets. So my question is, what is it about this phenomena that attracts creative people? That's for anybody who wants to answer, really.
I'll jump in
Does
on
it
that
attract
one.
creative people, or are the people
My
it's attracting to
experience actually
creative?
exploded my creative brain. I wasn't created till afterwards.
Oh, wow.
My brain just,
That was
all I
trying-
wanted to do was
Lit up,
create
didn't it?
stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like a light switch being flipped on. Basically, you go from being somebody that's more left brain to being more right brain. Because I still say part of this goes back to how our brains are wired. The signals that we receive, the signals that we put out, and being somebody that has been artistic my whole life, drawing, painting, sewing, singing, and seeing just how receptive I am to the phenomenon, and then seeing it in other people. I really do think that is part of the puzzle that's going to help us answer it. With people that tend to be more right-brained, we're able to think three-dimensionally. And when I say that, I mean that if I told you each to close your eyes and picture a place, now picture yourself in that place and ask you where you're standing, you would each be able to tell me exactly where you're standing, which direction you're facing, what's in front of you, what's beside you, what's behind you. And it's how that part of the brain receives and perceives the reality around us. I used to work with art students that had various brain disorders, everything from cerebral palsy, autistic, and helping them understand how to translate what their brain wants and what their body is doing in trying to create, and marry the two is marrying the right and left brain. And it's very similar to what we're talking about with the woo and science, is helping work those two parts of the brain at the same time. You get higher brain function. Right now, my brain is trying to process faster than I can speak, so I will stutter. And so helping other people understand that aspect of it, I think, is a huge key to what's going on with the whole community. Does that make
And
sense?
it does.
Yeah.
It does make sense. There is a structure to being creative also. Just because you're creative doesn't mean you're all over the board, and it's a very interesting observation, Benji, that you have taken note. There's this collective commonality between experiencers, that there's this creative side. There's Brian from mostly space in New York, Vinny, disclosure team, Max, videographer, and so there is something to say about that. Being analytics wise, I would say, where we're going, okay, why is this happening? Why are these people, either one, maybe they're the ones that are coming forward or that are brave enough to come forward, and maybe you're more, mathematical, structured, militant side are staying back because they're afraid of these consequences. And maybe it's the experiencers such as us that are coming forward because we're going, hey, look, this is really weird. I like weird. I'm into weird stuff personally, like let's figure this out. So that could possibly hold true to maybe that observation that you mentioned. So very interesting.
People have the left brain turning on too, because like Tom Matt's story, he got in, or his situation or his life story, he got into mathematics like out of nowhere after all that he went through. I'm like, can that happen to me? I need math to be easy.
Yeah, right. The binary code. Can you
zap like the left brain? I've got enough of the right brain. Just give me a good zap on the other side so I can do math better.
Right on.
More math better now, please. Thank you.
Exactly. You do all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Your brain zap, please.
I see colors. Okay, so yeah, can I just say a quick thank you to Disclosure Team also.
Yes.
Earlier this year that was the main one. Yeah, and UAP Secrecy. He's an incredible source, as mentioned before as well, and all the amazing people that we've gotten to meet throughout this last year, and everything that's been in the previous years as well. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the people that have already, come forward and tried to seek this out. I mean, there's so many people way before us that we have to seriously applaud. So thank you to everyone. And let's keep the newcomers. We're building a team.
And if you're out there, please be kind to people.
Yes.
There shouldn't be this whole weird initiation process that people go through in Twitter. Like somebody new pops up and everybody's instantly on them. Sometimes we need some new blood, guys. Like, thank you to everybody that's paved the way. But without new thought processes and new eyes on the subject, we might be missing something that they see that we don't see. So please be open-minded to new people and be kind to them. And there's no reason to be attacking anybody ever, but
And don't be afraid to be silly and have some fun.
Wait, I thought you were a fairy. I did not know you were a Furby.
It's the new tinfoil hat.
It's my rainbow cat lady ears.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love it.
You should have seen Brian's look when I put them on first time.
I thought David was meowing earlier, and then the cat was behind him. I was like, "What is going on there?"
Your cat made a debut.
Yes, you did.
I'm just saying.
You gotta
Usually
be
Laura's
able to
cat's coming
laugh.
Say what? Say that again?
Yeah, right now, actually, I've got one of my kitties sitting in the doorway yelling at Dad because he's not coming in here to pet her while she eats.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
It is
They
the
don't lay
most
down and
pathetic
eat.
and adorable thing.
Some cats lay down and eat, and I'm always like, they're like hungry hippos. Like they just lay there and just eat the food. I'm like, you're not even gonna sit. Anyways, now we're talking about cats.
Down
Animals
the
always
hole
seem to work their way into the conversation. Does anybody else have anything they didn't get to address? Don't think we heard from Shane or David on any last words. I know that sounds so dramatic. What are
No.
your last words for
Jane
today?
can go ahead because I'll talk way too much.
I'll just say that March I'll be at the UFO Expo in Roswell. I'll be
Nice.
live with our podcast, and I think on a panel there. And then, I think June or July, there's the Roswell UFO Festival. I'll be there as well. So my podcast, I have Mind Escape, Roswell UFO Symposium, Spaces, anything and everything I can do to get this message out. I got
Where can
time.
people find your podcast, Shane? Because I know
This will be Roswell UFO Symposium, and it's on Spotify. It's on all
Awesome.
the podcast things, right?
Okay.
They're a pretty bad promoter, but I should promote better because I want to
Right.
get the message out. So
Yeah, if you
Doing
guys
awesome
put your
stuff.
links, if you guys, I think I have like your social media links in the description, but if not, please put them in the group
Okay.
chat on Instagram, and I can add them to the description so people can find everybody where they want to be found.
and thank all of you for what you guys do and coming forward and your podcast
Thank
and
you.
speaking about it. It's not easy, and it's what brought me forward. So thank you.
Very cool.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
service, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
for your service.
Thank you very much.
All right, John, your
Oh yeah,
turn.
wait. Shout out to Wounded Warrior. I can't not do that. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yes.
Shout out to Wounded Warrior. There we go. We're good. Apologies.
Absolutely.
And thank
in
you to
My husband's chiming in. He's Army, so he said something about
Go Army. In the
he's locked
coming
out, so he
year,
can't come in.
I am going to be getting my certification as a sound healer and sound
Oh,
therapist.
cool.
So working with singing bowls, that sort of thing. I've found a fascination with how sound frequency seems to have an effect on us experiencers. And I'd like to see if maybe I can use that as a tool to help all of us on all sides of this and get a better understanding of the science behind it.
Absolutely.
We'll join
Laura, if you want to do a
forces.
if you want to do a sound bowl, I have a bunch of brass ones. So if you want to do a little sound bowl get together, we can do that.
Oh, that would be nice. That would be very nice. And if anybody tries to find me, I have a public profile on Instagram under Laura Sandling Bennett. You'll see me around on YouTube under Paranormal Pixie Laura. I think that's also what I have on my TikTok, which I'm still trying to figure out.
Oh my goodness,
Eventually
yeah.
I'll start actually posting things on there.
TikTok's
But
another world.
I'm open if anybody has questions, if anybody just needs somebody to talk to.
Thank you.
You're an angel.
All right, John, your turn. Or David. Why do I keep calling you? I keep wanting to call you John. I think because I met you with John. So like it's like David, John, and Max in my head all at once, which is kind of scary. But
John's my middle name.
oh, okay. Maybe I've
Yeah,
That's what it is. I don't know if I really have a lot of plans for next year. My cat is just.
I love loud cats. It's okay.
I think I was talking with DJ from Calling All Beings, and he's wanting to bring a small group of people out here to see what we can stir up or not.
Oh,
So
man.
that's kind of I just got to make sure the lake houses are cleared so somebody can have a place to sleep. Otherwise, that's where you're sleeping.
with the loud kitty. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then like I've done your podcast and I did Calling All Beings. And I pretty much told everything. So I'm just like, that's my business card. If somebody, I'll kind of chime into a thread and they're like, you've seen that, you've done that. I'm like, yeah, here's this. And then just kind of keep doing that. I don't really have content plans or anything like that other than just keep speaking my truth, as it were. And to the data collection point, and back to Tom Matt, he actually came out here a couple weekends ago, and we had some weird. We tested out telepathy. I'll just go ahead and
You
say
told
it.
me a little bit about that.
Oh, dude, there were a couple of occasions where I was like, okay. So I'm into to testing that kind of stuff. When Steph brought up gathering this data, I say do it.
All right.
Get weird with it,
Yeah,
because
Steph, we're here to help you in any
Will
way
do.
possible.
So that's all I got. And I appreciate everybody for being honest and open and discussing this, because it needs to happen.
Agreed.
Well,
Amen.
thank you so much, everybody, for coming on. Happy holidays. And if it's Yule today, it's solstice. So if you haven't set some intentions and let some shit go do that after this. And then thank you to everybody in the live chat that joined at the beginning and later. If you're listening to this later, thank you so much. Share, subscribe, like, as they say in YouTube world. And Benji says his laptop's about to die. Okay, so thank you, Benji. We're going to be ending this soon. Everybody hang out afterwards. Have a good, safe holiday season. And if you're interested in book club stuff, we are reading Kelly Chase's UFO Rabbit Hole book. She also has an amazing UFO Rabbit Hole podcast. She's just a brilliant, brilliant person if you're looking for another UFO podcast to listen to. And she's also a really cool person just to chat with. And she's very supportive to people on Twitter. And I just love everything about that person. So go check her book out, buy it on Amazon, and then join us for book club in January. And everybody hang out afterwards. And everybody else, have a great night. And I will see you soon. I think my next thing is in January. So I'll see you then.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Bye, guys.